I remember the first baptism I ever witnessed, and believe me, I've witnessed and participated in many, many, many baptisms over the years. But the first one was for my youngest brother, Tom. Tom was the fifth of 5 children in our family. 2 older sisters, myself, and then my 2 younger brothers. So if you ever wonder why I'm that person that's always like trying to mediate crises, kind of keep the peace, and I've been doing that my whole life. I mean, since I was, a tyke. And a few things about my brother's baptism that stand out for me. First of all, it was the first one that my mother was able to attend, because in those days, a mother wouldn't go to the baptism of her own children until she had been churched. But with the changes taking place in the 1960s, she was able to attend and was really loved the idea of going to and being part of one of her children's baptisms. The other part of it was that it was exactly 2 weeks after he was born, as was the practice of the day. And he was baptized with water from a holy well, St. Coleman's well, that was on my grandparents' property in Galway before they migrated to the United States. And the priest, I remember, made my mother very clear that though he would bless it, he could not decontaminate it if it had any microbes from being out in the country. And Tom was given the name Coleman after that very particular saint. All of which is to say that there was a lot of fuss. And I had gotten used to having been displaced by my brother Packy, but he was having none of it. And so as all the attention was being placed on the baby, my middle brother, Packy, was getting more and more upset. And of course, my mother was going around saying, we got to get the christening gown, we have to get things ready for the christening, we have to invite people over to the house afterwards, after the christening, a word that was used more often than baptism back then. And so it was a wonderful event. We were gathered in the sacristy where the baptismal font was, kind of like, it would be as if it were in that vesting room that we have our vestments in. So it was really off the beaten track, and there were 3 or 4 other babies being baptized. And sure enough, once the water from St. Coleman's well hit my brother's head, he began to scream bloody murder, as children often do. Which led my brother Packy to turn to me as we were standing kind of in the back and said, "Listen to him. He thinks he's the only baby being crucified." Christening, crucified, you get the point, but I often think, okay, it's a funny story. It really is. And my brother Packy's displeasure has a lot to add to it, but the guy was wise. He picked up on something. The connection between baptism and crucifixion. As we celebrate today, it's the baptism of Jesus. It's the beginning of his ministry that will lead to his giving up of his own life and calling us to do the same. Someone once referred to the practice of infant baptism. It's a little snide, but and believe me, I love me a good infant baptism with pictures and babies running around. I really do. But someone once referred to it as, well, look at what we've done with baptism. We've turned it into the damp petting of small children. Whereas we're given a very different view of baptism when we come into our chapel. The baptismal font is not hidden away. It's not a little bowl. It is right now, but we're working on that. Our baptismal font is a huge statement of what baptism is meant to be for our lives. It's looking at it now as it's being renovated for the 40th anniversary of the chapel this year. You can literally look into it as if it were a tomb, and it is. It will be filled with water, hopefully before Easter, the Easter Vigil. And that life-giving water will transform it from a tomb into a passageway to new life. That is what baptism is. It's the decision, it's the effect that it has on us is to transform us from an old way of life into a new people of God, into a new community of witnesses on the earth of the kingdom of God that Jesus has come to bring and continues to bring. And in the face of all the stuff that's happening in our world, it's just a greater reason for us to hearken back to how that transformation has called us to be transformed in the image of Christ, to be configured for Christ and his mission in a very particular way, and to lend our hands to the work of that kingdom that Jesus ministered for us in so many ways and continues to do so. I don't know if you've ever noticed it, but our font has an inscription, and it's one of those kind of circular, you kind of start, you don't know quite where to start, but I think I've got it right. You start at as you enter from the church, from the doors. One faith, one font. One spirit makes one people. No barrier can divide where one life unites.